Welcome to that episode of Jay Leno's Garage. We are doing one of our restoration blogs. People seem to get a big kick out of these because it's all the projects we've been working on for years and years that finally come to fruition. You know, it's funny. This was once a discarded engine that was just left to die, I guess you'd say. It is a Duesenberg motor. These are extremely rare. There aren't any left. And what people do is when stuff is plentiful, you use the best ones. You keep pushing the junkier ones to the back. And then you get to the back and there's only one left. And I don't think there are any more Duesenberg engines left. This one needs a bit of repair. It hasn't seen use in probably 60 years. It looks a little rough, a lot of pieces missing. If you look on the side here, you'll see there was a repair done. This is a non-pressurized system, so water had been left in this block. It ate through, corroded there. They used a metal plate that they screwed over there and they put that on to repair it. And they repaired it for a while. And we will repair it again. We're not going to use heat. We're probably going to use epoxy. We'll clean it up. It's okay to use epoxy because this is not a pressurized system. So it's not like the engine gets hot and there's a lot of pressure on the water to push out. I'm afraid we'll warp it if we try to weld on it. You know, there aren't any Duesenberg pieces left everywhere. I think I've gotten the last few pieces that still exist. Well, I bought a Duesenberg engine about 15 years ago for $80,000, and now that same engine is probably $300,000 for. I mean, it's just gotten nuts. So that's why we've got to bring this one back. You kind of scour the earth, finding old guys, of which I am one now, who have this stuff. And this is what we have here. These are some of the few Duesenberg pieces that are left. Water pump. Believe it or not, this stuff costs you a fortune. This doesn't look like $20,000 worth of pieces, but that's what it is. Because there are no more Duesenberg pieces. These engines were really expensive to produce back in the day. And the salvage rate, I mean, they would cast 100 blocks and maybe 10 or 15 were actually any good. So there was a lot of waste. They were very expensive. A lot of stuff was thrown out. In fact, people would go back to Lycoming Plant in Pennsylvania and dig up in the dirt to see if there was any stuff that was thrown away. But we've got a lot of the pieces now. These are for the timing chains, for the cams. That's where all these are. These are just so these are valve covers. As you can see, this one is broken off. We will attempt to, again, it's aluminum, so you can't really weld on it. So we're going to make another piece and pin it, polish it up, and it'll look brand new. These here are water plates. They go on the side. Generator, starter, holder. It's all real Duesenberg stuff. Oil, this is your oil filter. Oh, man. Nobody changed your oil on that motor. Look at that. Jesus. Okay. Well, I'll give you some idea. You know, the Duesenberg was the first car to have a computer. It was mechanical, but it was a computer. So it's kind of interesting. And this is what they call the brain. It tells you when to change the oil and put water in the battery and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we got our work cut out for. Even that bell housing. Now this one, excuse me, this bell housing here is cracked. But we managed to find a brand new one. It's right there on the ground. Not a brand new one, but a second-hand one that's not cracked. This is going to be a while, so don't be in any hurry for this one. Let me show you another project that's taken a long time. Come on. All right, this is a project we've been working on for, since 2011. It just got to put it on the back burner. This is an Ariel Atom. I bought this car back in 2006. This, as you know, they're originally built in England. Simon Saunders built them. Just a fabulous car. They had a Honda motor. A company named Bramo up in Oregon decided to sell them and manufacture them here using the Cobalt engine, that 2-liter Chevy engine. And that worked fine for a while, had a good time. The ECU screwed up on it, and the company had gone out of business, so it's just sat and sat. And I had a guy named John Hartley. He built this engine for me. It's a bespoke block with 2 Hayabusa motorcycle heads on it. It's about 3 liters, maybe a little bit more. Makes 488 horsepower on the dyno. It's pretty amazing. And needless to say, it's a lot lighter than that big Cobalt lump. This originally had a manual transmission in it. We converted to this 6-speed Sved out of France. racing transmission. It's got a compressor on it. It's pneumatic, you know, so just bam, bam, bam. It shifts really quickly. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We're just starting to get this thing together. This is basically the engine Simon Saunders uses on the ones he manufactures. And he's been very helpful for us in giving us tips and things we need for this to get it going. So I'm real excited about this. This was the very first Ariel Atom built here in the United States. So I've had it now, God, 16 years, something like that. So with the 488 horsepower, it should move along pretty good. We'll put a new dash in, new electronics, the new transmission, stronger axles, a few other things, and I think this is really going to go pretty good. Come on, let's move on to the next item. As you can see on this restoration blog, we're doing a lot of repairs. This is my 1940 Indian Chief. You've probably seen it on the website before. A couple months ago, I had a pretty bad accident where I was going down the road. And I'm going, oh, I'm leaking gas out of this carburetor. Let me go back to the shop. So I turned down a side street. I figured I would cut through a parking lot. Unbeknownst to me, there was a wire across the parking lot. Really didn't have much of a flag or anything on it. And the sun was in my eyes. I couldn't see it. And then finally, I saw the wire when it was right here. Boom. Threw me down off the bike. And being a sidecar, the bike just kept going and crashed into a building. There you go. So as you can see, we got some damage there. Damage on the front fender. I think it tweaked my forks a little bit. I'm probably going to get another new set of forks. As you can see, these were chromed long before I got the bike. There's such a thing as called hydrogen embrittlement. If you chrome metal and you don't do it properly, it weakens it. So it can actually make it brittle and break. And it's always been in the back of my mind that that could happen here. So I'm going to get a brand new set of original forks. But that's pretty much what happened. I still got a broken collarbone, 2 broken ribs, and a couple of cracked kneecaps. So if you see me limping around here, well, you probably will for the next couple of videos. But like an idiot, I'm going to fix it and get back on it again. Because as you know, once a man hits 40, you can't really teach him anything. They just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. Luckily, I'm only 72. Had I been an older man, this could have been a serious accident. But anyway, that's pretty much it. It's a shame, too, because George did a great job on the motor. She runs fine. But we'll get this front end fixed. We'll fix the sidecar. Maybe upgrade the brakes a little bit. But yeah, I just didn't see it, you know. And I just saw that wire. You can still see, it's still got a little bit of a scar here, and a scar on my neck. If I had been going like 50 or something, I probably would have been decapitated. So I was pretty lucky. And anytime you don't get decapitated, boy, that's good luck. All right, that's about where we are here. This is pretty much just a lot of bang and mold metal back together again. No real mechanical damage to it, other than these forks. They're a little tweaked. I don't think the headstock here got moved at all, so I think I'm okay. Oh, and right next to it, right there, I forgot all about that. That's the chassis for our 1957 Volkswagen. I got this a long time ago. A lovely lady had the car 50 years, eloped in the car with her husband, you know, the whole deal. And it was just pretty far gone, a lot of rust. She gave it to me. I said I would totally redo it and try to bring it back. And I've been keeping her and her husband updated on it, and as I will you too. Yeah, so fix this up. We're going to put a more modern front end in it with disc brakes, make it stop just a little bit better. We're upgrading the engine. It'll still be an air-cooled Volkswagen engine, but we'll make it a 1.6. We're not going to go crazy. It's not going to be a hot rod. It'll have maybe 75 to 90 horsepower when we're done. I just want to be a nice driver because it's a 57. It's an unusual color. We painted it back to the original color. It's an oval, the small oval window car. Here are the door panels. That you can see we've redone those. Redone the trim over there as well. And of course the seats, we just finished upholstery. Well, come on, I'll show you what that looks like. Take a look. This is our sanding booth. We painted the car and obviously the painting booth on the other end. As you can see, we did it pretty much original. This is the original color of the car. We put Dynamat and a few other things in here to kind of quiet it down a little bit. You notice a smaller window that they used in 57, and before this you had what they call the split window. But it's just a classic Volkswagen. Like I said, a little more power, make it a little more drivable with better brakes, and a few modern things, which when we do the actual road test and when we finish it up, we'll take you through that. But I thought you might get a kick out of what we've been working on. Come on, let me show you what happened with the tank car. Now the tank car, that engine, well here, I'll explain when we get over there. Well, this is our tank car, the one with the M47 patent tank engine in it. And Jimmy's done a great job on this. This engine weighs close to 4,000 pounds. The whole car weighs 5 tons. And you go down the freeway in this thing, it's 70, 80 miles an hour. When you hit those bumps, you just feel it come down that chassis. And one night, I noticed it's starting to get kind of squirrely on me. And I noticed that it's starting to look like that horse in the Three Stooges movie, you know, it has a big thing in the middle. And the engine had literally cracked the chassis. So I asked Jimmy how he could fix it, and he's done a great job. It's a matter of jacking it up the center and then putting a brace, right?
Yeah, we braced up the center of it and let it cantilever its own weight, which brought the frame back together where it was cracked, and then we got back up on the inside, cleaned it. We added a piece of chromoly across the whole bottom. But we also knew it was sagging too, because the hood line here was starting to pinch on the cowl because it was actually sagging down. So we got it back up, and also the suspension seems to track to the spot it had a problem. So there's a lot of force going on right here on that part of the frame.
Right.
So we welded it back together, made it stronger than it was before, and I think you noticed it in the steering a little bit too.
And this engine has so much torque. When we got this thing, we just had a body, and we had to reinforce it here because the torque would literally just twist it apart from this engine. Now, Jimmy's also been working on making a new boiler. There's the original right there. Give you an idea what 100 years of use will do. The nice thing about handmade stuff is hands haven't changed. You can still make it, and nobody's got better hands than Jimmy. And he's building this one out of stainless, so 100 years from now, I don't have that problem.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
So, so once in 100 years is fine. But anyway, as you can see, it's coming together very nicely, and certainly much stronger than the original, isn't it?
It's sturdier, and it's going to hold back any kind of heat. It's not going to rust, so
right.
You know, it's going to last forever. Then from here, we're going to give it to George. George will pack it with all the insulation. He gets this other ring on the outside. That part gets finished, and then it goes into the car.
And it goes into the steam car, right?
Yeah, the actual coils will actually go down inside the top of this. So we're still waiting on a new set of coil for this one too.
Right.
Make sure it all fits before we finalize anything, because going back and fixing it takes too much time, really. Yeah. These are they're simple, but they're kind of complex because you don't want to have to make everything twice.
Right.
You know?
The coil is actually the steam generator unit.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a series of coils, and the heat comes up through the center, heats the coils. But here, let's show you what the car looks like, because this is a car we built pretty much from scratch, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Come on, I'll show you what we're talking about. This is our, I guess, 1907 white steam car. See, Jimmy did a beautiful job making a new copper water tank for us. And the coil and the generator go right in here, fitting right in this area. It's right under the seat, so your seat's going to be nice and warm. And that's how you make your heat. But this is, we had the pieces, we had the chassis, but nothing else. So Jimmy made that, we made the tank, a lot of the other pieces as well.
The whole body.
As you can see, we've got a lot of projects here if you're wondering why stuff never gets done.
It's coming together. We're close on this one. Once we get the burn and the stuff the guy saw there put back in this car, it's going to move forward. We already have the engine for it. Most of the body's pretty much already finished. Just a matter of finishing, finalizing a couple things. But once we get this burner and get it plumbed in, that's going to be key. And this is extra water for you.
Right.
The original tank, what are they, like 16, 17 gallons?
Right.
And this is going to be an extra like 15, 16 gallons.
You know, so if you want to make Oregon in a day, you know.
You don't have to stop for water.
Exactly,
there you go.
Exactly. So cool. Well, speaking of steam, let's take a look at our Doble. That's been down for about 4 or 5 years, so that's a big job.
It is.
George and Ava are working on the Doble steam car. This car, a fascinating automobile, the greatest steam car ever built, the only steam car where you turn the key and you go right away. Trouble was we had it all done, we had it finished, and this requires high temperature steam oil, superheated steam oil. You can't just use regular steam oil. It requires the type of oil they use in the oil in nuclear subs, things of that nature.
Right.
I had a guy said, oh yeah, I make that oil. And it wasn't, it was just regular steam oil. So we use it in this car, and the temperatures, this thing's running at 800, 900 degrees temperature, and the oil just scorched us in. We had to remake everything, pistons, whatever. If you want to know what pistons look like, there's one there. That's a high pressure piston. Okay, had to redo everything on it. What George is doing now is setting the pop-off valves. If the pressure gets too high, rather than crack the whole block, the pressure relief will open and you hear, and the high pressure is what, about 800 degrees?
It's 1,000 PSI.
1,000 PSI.
These blow off at 800.
800, and those
So
blow off at 450.
If the driver opens the throttle too quick,
Right.
it'll blow off excessive pressure.
Right.
As opposed to blowing a piston apart, which we've seen.
Yeah, which we've done.
And you know, this thing had a really big steam leak, is why we took it apart the second time. We did get the oil right, and there wasn't a whole lot of wear there, but it really was time, if you're gonna have it down this far,
Yeah.
to just go through everything. Also the valves, a couple of the valves, the ring lands were cracked.
Right.
And any steam leaks or any steam going where it shouldn't is a rough engine and inefficient and whatever.
Right.
So,
And a steam car, exact opposite of a gas car. And a gas car, you're trying to get the heat out. You know, headers, open it, get as much heat out of the engine you can because it's making so. In a steam car, you're trying to keep the heat in. Any steam that escapes is power. You're losing 10 horsepower, 20 horsepower, whatever it might be.
yeah,
So-
I mean, if you lose a quart of water,
Yeah.
that could be 20 miles.
Right, exactly.
And power.
And you
So,
see how many piston rings. A piston ring goes in each one of these.
Yeah, there's 12. And see, this
Yeah.
is where this is broken.
Yeah, see, it's chipped up there.
If you get bypass there, the engine's not going to run right.
Right, so
And,
we got to make new valves.
yeah, and Bernard has done that.
And here's our low pressure piston. And that's the high pressure piston right there.
Yeah, these pistons were loose on the rod,
So they
and
were, yeah,
that'll make noise.
right.
You don't want to hear knocks in this engine.
No,
It can
no.
get pricey.
But the cool thing about steam is there's no transmission. The engine makes so much torque. You've got 1,000 foot-pounds of torque here from zero. So just open that throttle just a crack, and it literally just pushes you down the road.
Yeah, the back of the car climbs up.
I know, it's funny.
It's powerful.
And then you have to pack the cylinders and pack the valve, which is what Ava's doing now. Ava is our, she is a expert welder and a fabricator. She came along a little after steam, probably about 125 years after steam.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so now she's just kind of learning the steam. So many women getting in the steam trade these days. You know, it's a whole new area opened up. But she does a great job. And what you do is you put this graphite packing in around here. See, the rod goes down in between like this, and the packing keeps it and seals it. So you make like a ring, exactly. You put that in. And what happens, the constant pounding on it keeps flattening out the packing, so it keeps it tight and no steam can escape. So there you go. So let's move ahead about 65 years. We'll show you what we're doing to our Corvette. Come on. This is my 63 Corvette split window, fuel-y car, 375 horsepower. I've had this car for well over a decade. Extremely low mileage. It was under 3,000 miles when I got it, but it's just been sitting and kind of neglected. It ran okay, not great, a little rough. So we pulled the engine out. We did Carrillo rods, get it balanced, ported, the whole deal. You'll get stock, but just make it a nice running car. So we're just waiting for the pistons are supposed to come in today, actually. We've got the new Carrillo rods, a few of the other pieces. We'll send it out to get balanced. We'll put it back in the car and we'll let you know how it goes. But one of my favorite automobiles, just a great, great car. Iconic, you know, with the classic split window. Oh, a couple of steam cars I forgot all about. Come here, let me show you. This is the engine out of my 30-horse white steam car. This is the one I was working on when my face caught fire. I got hit with a face full of gasoline and the pilot set the fire, the whole deal. Anyway, this is the engine that did it. It ran okay, but you know, steam engines are so incredibly smooth. It's so incredibly quiet. It's almost like an electric. You don't even hear it, and people are astounded. And this just had a few problems. You can see what corrosion does. Take a look here. I mean, these are some of the inlet pipes that go to it. There's water going through there, and 100 years of water and sitting in a barn for 20 or 30 years takes its toll. As you can see, it really blew apart here. Another piece here, same thing, same thing. We'll remake all of these pieces. These are your intake valves. Now you'll see where corrosion from 100 years of steam and rust just eats it away. So we're going to make brand new valves. And this will make this engine just as quiet as the day it left the factory. But they're just beautiful. They're 2-cylinder, 30 horsepower with a lot of torque. Yeah, they're just wonderful, wonderful engines. Come on, let me show you a steam car that I kind of climbed Mount Washington in. This is a very interesting Stanley steamer. If it looks different from the other Stanley steamers, I'll explain why in a minute. It's much lower. You notice it seems high because we've got it on the lift and it's a little bit off the ground. But by 1912, writing was on the wall. The gas cars, the Mercer Raceabout, the locomobiles, these were quickly surpassing Stanleys. And the Stanley brothers were fairly conservative, very conservative. Guys from Maine, they just built their steam cars. And Effie's son, Raymond, went to MIT and studied automotive design. And he wanted to design a Stanley that was like the Mercer Raceabouts and the American Underslung, you know, with the low to the ground with the big wheels. And that's what he did. Most Stanleys would sit right up here much higher, whereas this one is kind of low and racy looking. And Raymond had a good eye. I think it's a good looking car with the disc wheels, 30 horsepower, very quite fast. This one is a recreation, although it has a lot of original Stanley parts. Whether any of them are off the actual car, I don't know, because the car had been wrecked a couple of times. You know, Stanleys were made of wood mostly, so you could, they're a bit like Lincoln's Axe, you know, third handle, fifth head, that type of deal. Raymond designed this car. The car was destroyed. A guy named Brent Campbell, whose father worked for Stanley. And Brent was, well, Father Steam, we used to call him. He was the guy who knew all about it. He lived for Stanley steamers. He loved them. He had quite a few of them. And this was his opus, I guess you'd call it. He spent a fortune building it and designing it. Unfortunately, he was struck with MS. And that really incapacitated him, but it didn't keep him off the road. You know, friends would literally have to pick him up and put him in the car and help him out. And we used this car to climb Mount Washington, which was the steepest peak, I think, in New Hampshire. The Stanley brothers had done it 100 years earlier. It was the first car ever to go to the top. And he wanted to do it, and we wanted to do it with this car. So we kind of helped Brent get into the car, and we did it. We took it all the way up to the top of the mountain, and I think Brent got a real kick out of that, considering how ill he was. He was still able to kind of persevere through. He was quite a guy. He passed away a few years later. I acquired the car, and it needs quite a bit. The boiler had been scorched. It means a new boiler. Just a lot of things needed to be fixed and updated. And that's what we're doing now. I'll get into all of that when we do the actual, because we're not that far from getting it roadworthy. It should be roadworthy in a month or two, and we'll give you a full road test on it. But we thought you just might get a kick out of seeing what it looked like now. This kind of low slung and racy looking, and it's different than the other Stanleys. So I'm going to really enjoy driving this. I enjoy driving up Mount Washington, so it's going to be fun. Come on, let's see what else we got. Well, this is my 1957 Cadillac. This is a car that's been kicking around the shop for at least 15 years. It just sat back there for years and years, and thought, well, let's restore it. Let's not go crazy. Let's just do
cosmetic.
Yeah, cosmetic. We'll do the original motor, original transmission. Okay, that turned into a nightmare. Okay. The body turned out great. The interior turned out great. You know, this is an engine, when it was new in '57, it was problematic. They had overheating problems and a few other things as well. We got it in here. First thing, transmission didn't feel right. And it was working too hard. You know, back in '57, and people did drive at 60 miles an hour, but most people drove 45, 55.
Not as much stop and go, probably.
Yeah, not much stop and go either. And consequently, I always felt the engine was revving kind of high. So we put in a more modern GM transmission with an overdrive, so automatic. So that helped. Then the engine was just making a lot of noise, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. And well, we had some bad rockers, and the rocker chewed up the can. The engine came out again. We're waiting for it to come back right now. But we thought, let's figure out how to solve this heating problem forever. And Jimmy here has come up with a brilliant idea, and it looks stock. Tell them what we did here, Jimmy.
Well, probably the purists aren't going to like it too much, but what we've done is we've taken out the original radiator and we've put a cross-flow aluminum radiator, and we also installed air conditioning in this car too. So we moved everything a little bit further forward, and we got dual fans here that are going to come on with the AC and also with the temperature control.
And we did away with the engine-driven fans.
The engine-driven
so
fans
that'll
are going
keep
to be
it quiet.
eliminated.
You know, it's a Cadillac. It should be as quiet as an electric car.
It should. And that's one of the things this was not. It wasn't quiet, and so we've been changing and upgrading a few things, and hopefully this time we're going to have it all go right. You know, George, you know, he's got to deal with pulling all the stuff in and out. It's a lot of work on these cars, you know, once you get everything hooked up, everything's painted, everything's clean.
And we did a new booster too, as well.
Yep, the new brake booster got added to it. You know, said upgrade with the transmission.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes from here, and hopefully we don't have to go through this anymore. And car should be finished soon, though.
Yeah, the trouble with them before, here in California, especially in the summer, it gets very hot.
It does.
And you'd sit at a light and you'd see it go all the way. It never actually boiled over or overheated. It would just be on hot all the time.
Right.
And then it'd cool a little bit and then come back. So I said, hopefully this will fix the problem. We put a little space between the condenser and here, so.
Yeah, we painted everything semi-matte black and tried to make it look nice and clean as we could as original. That's why we painted the aluminum all
if you didn't
black.
know when you opened the hood, you'd think that's the way it was, even though anybody would know. So that's pretty much where we are. As you can see, this restoration blog was not about creating new cars or building new cars, just trying to fix all the broken stuff, including me. So, you know, once this all heals, we'll be back and riding motorcycles again. Don't mention that to my wife about riding the motorcycles again. That's just between us. Yeah, let it go at that. See you guys next week.